empowering the blind to be excellent, do more, and live with greater success. This show is for you and about you. Welcome to the Delivering Access Podcast.
All right, so Keith, are you ready to empower?
You bet, I am ready.
Absolutely. So Keith, you are our spotlighted hero for today. Take a minute, tell us about yourself, how you became blind, and a little bit of the technology you used along your way.
Sure. Well, Vashon, I was born totally blind in southern Indiana in the Evansville area. And for a while, they had no idea what caused that blindness. And I can remember being taken at 8 years of age looking at a possible corneal transplant, and this doctor comes in and asks my mom, why are you here? He said, his eyes are perfect. And my mom said, well, then why can he not see? And they told them at that point that what happened was the vision center of the brain did not form. And so my eyes were actually seeing things, but my brain didn't realize it. So that's how I was born blind. And so I went to mainstream in a regular school for the most part. They had a unique situation in southern Indiana. Now, you got to think back. I'm an old man. I'm 56, or shall I say high middle-aged. Anyway,
Okay.
When I was young, in Indiana, the option basically was the state school for the blind, which was 200 miles away from my parents. Well, the doctors also told my parents, well, this one's blind. You don't know what caused it. You don't know what you would get if you had another one, so don't have any more kids.
Wow.
And back then, folks kind of looked at the doctors as not quite God, but almost. Mm-hmm. And so my parents, took that advice, didn't have any more kids. So they had a tough choice. Were they going to send their only child 200 miles away, or was there another option? They looked around and they found a school that was doing mainstreaming, which was really rare in the early 60s. Mm-hmm. And so I went to a classroom for blind students from kindergarten through third grade, learned Braille, learned to read and write it, learned some of the basic living skills for school. And then basically fourth grade on, I was mainstreamed. Used Braille extensively, learned to type in fourth grade, and starting in sixth grade, typed all my work. So that's why I can type between 80 and 100 words a minute. And
Right.
So that was really cool. Got to college and Braille pretty much disappeared. I was among other majors, I think I had 13 majors in my first 2 years before I finally decided where I was going. Mm-hmm. But unless you were an English literature major or something like that, most courses did not have a lot of Braille available. So I learned to use the tape recorder, the old 4-track cassettes, and before that, the old reel-to-reels. And then in 1986, I was introduced to the computer, the old Apple IIe. And, that Echo, you've probably heard the Echo speech synthesizer, haven't you?
I have.
Yeah. And, on that day, we thought it was beautiful,
right.
Because at least we could access the computer. So I've been using assistive technology since then. I have been primarily, over the last 16 years at least, a JAWS user, although I am familiar with Windows, NVDA, and System Access. And I'm trying to get a Mac in the office because I'm very impressed with the Mac operating system. And, of course, I'm an iPhone user and love the iOS interface. Okay. I am married to my wife, and if any of you listening ever saw that show Married with Children on TV, my wife's real name is Peg Bundy. That is not a joke.
Wow.
It's actually Margaret, but she's always gone by Peg. So I'm married to her, and we have 4 sons. Currently, I serve as a pastor of the First Baptist Church here in Madison, South Dakota. I'm also the assistant dean for student development at Dakota State University here in a little town called Madison, South Dakota. If you know anything about South Dakota, we're 50 miles northwest of Sioux Falls, and we're about 350 miles away from Mount Rushmore on the opposite side of the state.
Wow. Excellent. Excellent. So we're going to dive more into your journey and your tools of blindness in a minute, but I got a softball, or maybe it might be a hardball for you, but the question is, what's your passion and desires for the blind?
My passion and desire for the blind are threefold, Vashon. One is that Every blind person who is able to work otherwise can work and be paid equal with their abilities. I remember in the 80s when I first looked for work and how hard it was to get that first job. And I know 70% of us are unemployed. And so that's one of my passions. The other passion is that people who are blind are able to live in a world where socializing, where they're accepted as people who just happen to be blind, and where socializing can take place just like it does between people who are not blind. I know a lot of times socializing can be awkward for us for a whole lot of reasons. Never forget when I left college and moved out on my own. Well, I was married, but we moved out on our own, and I'll never forget what it was like to try to make friends. Okay, what do I talk about with these people? We don't have a whole lot in common. I don't work on cars. They don't do some of the things I do. And my passion is that all of us be socially well-rounded and able to communicate and socialize well with the world around us. And then the other passion is for technology, that technology is created with accessibility in mind. As a lot of you listening to this will know, that's really not that hard to do. It's just a reshaping of thought processes. Right. And if I can do things to help that happen, that's one of my goals, because technology is the key to learning. It's the key to equality, really, for those of us who are blind. And I can remember the days before we had it, and we may think we have some issues now, and we do, but believe me, what we've got now is so much better than what we had 20 years ago even.
Absolutely. So what technology, you talked a little bit about it in the first part of the interview. Are there any additional technologies that you're using right now that's just exciting you?
Well, right now I'm using, as I said, primarily JAWS for Windows. I use a Braille Connect 32 with JAWS and with the iPhone. And I'll tell you what, the iPhone and the iOS technologies are just thoroughly exciting me. It's really neat to be able to pull up a map, and my wife's the driver, obviously, in our family, and she won't let me borrow the car. I don't know why. Anyway, she being able to tell her where to make those turns, being able to do programs like, and I'm not getting a kickback from any company. I'm just stating some of the programs that really excite me. Tap-Tap-See, for example, to be able to know what color shirt I'm looking at, or be able to know what's ahead of me, or to be able to know what some of the photos that are in the iPhone's camera roll are. Those things are amazing. And I've even heard that with a little bit of work, you can get Tap-Tap-See to recognize thermostats and washing machines and things like that I haven't done yet. But it's wonderful that it helps you recognize. Example, my son's just got me a portable battery for the iPhone for Father's Day. And so it doesn't speak, and I thought there's got to be a way to recognize whether it's red, green, or blue. Well, lo and behold, if you use Tap-Tap-See, it'll tell you red, green, or blue flashlights. So It's not really a flashlight, but the color thing works. So those kind of things are exciting, and the ability to just pull up news. I guess the iPhone is the most exciting thing that's happened to me personally for years.
Okay. And I can definitely relate to that. I downloaded Tap-Tap-See about a week ago. And as far as the kickback from them, you can get as much as you want because it was free. But, I set a couple of cans on the counter. One was a Diet Coke, and sure enough, it said Diet Coke. One was a can of corn by some particular maker, and it told me the maker and that it was a can of corn. And for a free app, to do something that a lot of the other devices charge, hundreds and even thousands for, and to have this, rolled up into one device is definitely a winner in my book. So I can relate to that.
Another one that excites me, Vashon, is the Intel Money Reader.
Oh, yeah.
I got the iNote, and it worked fine, but it was just really slow on my phone, at least. And I got this Intel Money Reader, and I paid the $9.99 or whatever it costs. And I have never been more impressed with a money reading program. I mean, it is just amazing. I can, how people at the store just give you back all these bills at once, so you go find a place and you can just tell. It's the first time in my life that I've been able to do that without sighted assistance with any speed at all. Right.
Now, I have a horror story with Looktail Money Reader because I'm trying to use it now and it won't download to the iPhone with the update So I don't know whether I need to turn the phone off or, but I needed to identify some money, and I was searching for it and using Spotlight. It wouldn't come up, so I found it on the phone. I double tap on it. It says you can either download or quit. I push download, and then nothing happened. So,
oh man,
yeah. But I agree with you. It's great when I can use it, but it's just not working right now.
Right. And the other thing I'm looking forward to is playing with some of the scanning apps. The Prismo, I've done a little bit with that, but not much. Being totally blind, learning to focus a camera has been a real adventure for me. And I'm still not perfect. And a lot of times people who have seen and then lose sight have a little bit of an advantage there. But myself being born totally blind, obviously I've never taken pictures until recently. And so it's been quite an adjustment to learn to focus. So I'm going to play with some of the scanning programs. And I've really gotten quite into photography lately. Our first grandson came along in February. And so I have been able to take a lot of pictures of him. And if you look at my Facebook page, if anybody looks at my Facebook page, most of the pictures of my grandson have been taken by me. So it's pretty cool.
Absolutely. So let's transition a bit. Let's talk about the changes that you would like to see in the blindness community. What are you doing right now to invoke the change that you want to see?
Well, one thing is I am working on a committee here at the university called the Barrier-Free Learning Committee, and we're working to make sure that all of our programs are accessible and that our websites and things are accessible. And one of the things that I'm doing is when we come up with new ideas, I'm working to make sure they're blind accessible so that we can publicize our programs. Dakota State University is a small 4-year technology-based school, and we have a great distance ed program. I know a lot of people look at our program and say, there is no way I'm going to live in South Dakota where the snow blows and it gets knee high, or whatever in the winter. And some of that's true. It does. But we have a great distance program as well, and we offer several of our degrees online. And so my passion is to try to recruit people who are blind to come into our programs, take these classes, and serve as a resource for them, whether they're on our campus or in the distance ed route. I also am a member of the South Dakota Association of the Blind and work with them on some things. I do a lot of public speaking for blindness awareness. The message I want to get across to people is that we are people just like you. You may have red hair, but we can't see. And maybe that requires some accommodations, but it is what it is, and we are no different than you are, except for the vision.
Right.
And so that's another thing that I do. And then I also like to train blind people in the use of technology. In fact, I have had a business doing that, thinking about starting that business again.
Okay, excellent. So we talked about your journey as a person that was born pretty much blind, and a lot of the things that you do at the school, and those were all great. But let's talk about some of the challenges you have had, and how you overcame those.
Well, I think one of the big challenges that I faced growing up was attitude. I grew up in poverty, literal poverty. The only reason my house wasn't on the wrong side of the tracks was the geography itself.
Okay.
Grew up living in a converted garage with my dad, who was an alcoholic, and my mom. Neither one had much of an education, and just a very, very poverty-ridden situation. And my dad did a lot of things right, though. He told me from day one, son, you're going to get a college education. It wasn't, do you want to go to college? It's
right.
You're going to go to college. And I really credit him for that, because he pushed me in that direction from day one. Another thing that happened to me, Vashan, when I was young is that I did come to a personal faith in Jesus Christ as my Savior, that he died on the cross to forgive my sins. And I haven't been perfect since then by any way, and there's still been tough days.
Right.
But I've had that relationship with him that when I am having those tough days, I can pray and seek his will for my life, and that helps me to cope with a lot of my attitudes. Of course, other things I've had to cope with are sometimes, now I've been in this town now 24 years, and people know me pretty well. But boy, when you first get to know people, they don't quite know how to, it's almost like, man, I've never seen one of these before. Can I touch it?
Right.
No, does it talk?
Right, exactly.
But thank God, I've learned over the years how to socialize with people and, not to emphasize the blindness. I have learned that what people don't like to do is talk to a professional blind person.
Right.
And by professional blind person, what I mean by that is not a blind person working in a professional field,
right,
but somebody that all they can focus on is their blindness. How tough life is because I'm blind. Well, you know what? I got a secret for you guys. Everybody has tough hands to deal with. You may not see them. It may be inward. It may be something totally you'll never know about, but everybody's got tough hands to deal with. And quite frankly, if they want to know something about our blindness, they'll ask. And the last thing we want to do is focus on it.
Absolutely.
And that's really helped me, Vashan, in my socialization. And I don't know if you've had the same experience or not, but when I learned that, that really helped me to feel a lot more comfortable in social settings.
Yeah.
The challenge I still face that's going to be a while before I can overcome, but I'm sure I will before it's time for me to check out, is driving. I have driven illegally and unsafely before, but not in the last 15 years at least.
Okay.
But
statute of limitations, huh?
Yeah, it's expired, so I can talk about it now. But I live in a small town, and it's great because our town's about 6,500 people, and I can walk mostly wherever I need to go here in town. It's great. I have a guide dog named Mercury, and we walk all over town, which is a very good thing for me. But if I need to go down to our nearest town that has a Walmart or a major or medical specialist, Sioux Falls, that's a 50-mile run, and we have basically nothing for public transit. We have a little bus that runs around inside town that I will ride in the winter times because I gave up climbing snowbanks after I turned 50. But but other than that, there's no public transit. And so driving is a challenge that I still face. And usually my wife can drive. She went through a period health-wise where she couldn't for about a year, and I learned a lot about networking and setting up driving situations at that point. Fortunately, I do have 3 boys in the area, but you don't want to rely on them too much. So I'm thoroughly excited about the Google car and other things that are out there being developed, and I haven't had a chance to try any of them yet, but I've been telling people out here that I'm going to drive from Madison to Sioux Falls before I die, and I'm planning on living another 20 or 30 years, and they keep saying, you got to be kidding, and I say, nope, it's going to happen. So I'm looking forward to that.
Absolutely. Now, what about adjusting? I mean, do you ever feel that, you have adjusted, or, do you think in the blindness community, we arrive at this point where, we can say, hey, we're rehabilitated and we're here now, we're fully functional folks.
Well, I haven't looked at a lot of philosophical writing on this, but I'll tell you what my belief is. I don't believe we ever totally get there. I believe that there are always times, there are times, quite frankly, that I do have a rough time with being blind. There are, like a classic example. We've been remodeling our house this summer. Not remodeling, but putting new flooring in the living room. And I guess that's sort of remodeling. Okay. And so, what's happened with furniture. Furniture has moved.
Right.
And I find myself, when the kids or my wife move something and forget to tell me about it, I find myself very frustrated about being blind. And you can say what you want about, well, they should have told you. Well, you know what? We're all human. We forget sometimes. But I find that that's very tough. I find days from time to time where I still have a hard time with being blind, and I have to go back and rethink some things and relearn some things. So I think life is a constant process of adjusting to blindness. And I think the wonderful situation is most of the time you can be well adjusted to blindness, but don't ever think you're not going to have another tough day, or self-pity's not going to come calling sometime, or you're not going to feel bad about it. One time I got so frustrated or younger in life. See, I have this real neat belief about God, and some of you might want to close your ears for this, but I believe you can be totally honest with God. So one night I was so frustrated. I was about 20 years younger, had 3 little kids, and life was just tough. And I went over to the church I was pastoring at the time, and I said, God, you can take this blindness and stick it up your omnipotent backside.
Right.
And you know what? Lightning didn't hit me.
Okay.
You know, I was thinking it anyway. And I have this thing that, as you know, that we can be honest. God can be honest with me. I can be honest with him.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think it's a constant adjustment, Vashan. There's days that it goes well. And thank God, you know, I'm old enough and had enough experiences now that the majority of days go very well. Mm-hmm. But there are still those days.
Absolutely. And I guess the thing about it is, you know, we have this thing called blindness, and we can definitely resonate with that. And, you know, pretty much everyone listening will have some type of tie into the blindness. But, you know, in reality, that's a small piece, because you're still going to have those obstacles that come up that has nothing to do with blindness. You can't blame it on blindness. You can't say, well, this happened because I'm blind. Tell us about, you know, one of your biggest obstacles, challenges, something that happened in your life, non-blindness related, and how you overcame it or are overcoming it.
Well, Vashan, the toughest thing that happened in my life, and you're right, we do have, all of us face obstacles that have absolutely nothing to do with blindness. I have 4 sons, as I said. My last 2 played college football at a Division II level. One of them, my 3rd son, was actually able to play some professional indoor football for a couple of years as well. My 4th son had just finished he had redshirted a year, and he had just finished his freshman year on the football team at Southwest State, Minnesota. And on February 12th, 2010, we got a phone call that he had passed out just before weightlifting, and they had taken him to a local hospital, and they were airlifting him to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, because he had what they called a brain bleed. In other words, an aneurysm, and they had to do major surgery. And so they airlifted our son to Sioux Falls. They did the surgery, which was successful, about an 8-hour surgery, but the damage had been so deep that they were not very optimistic. Right. And 5 days later, my 20-year-old son passed away. Oh. And that was the hardest thing that we've ever had to deal with. Blindness is a piece of cake compared to that.
Right.
Because unless someone has lost a son, and I as a pastor had dealt with people who had lost children before. My sister-in-law died, so my mother-in-law had lost a child. I've dealt with those people, but you don't fully understand it until it happens to you. And that was a time that just was devastating for us. And still tough to deal with after 3.5 years. And I found out after that my neighbor lost a son in an automobile accident 37 years ago. You never get completely over something like that. But the thing that helps me deal with that the most is my faith in Jesus Christ. My son was a believer, all around good kid, and we know where Ben is today. We know he is with God in heaven. And we know we'll see him someday. But it's still tough. And I think the one line that, it's funny, I'd heard this story about 6 months before Ben died. And when he died, the media asked me if I would comment, and I used the line at the end of this story. In Madison, there was a Presbyterian pastor who had a son who was fighting in World War I. On a Saturday, he got a telegram stating that his son had died in action. Mm-hmm. Sunday morning, the congregation went in, and they were surprised to see the pastor walk out on the platform. And so one of them walked up to him and they said, "Are you really going to preach today? You don't have to. Your son just died." And he said this line, and it stayed in my memory. He said, "The same God who was God before my son died is still God today." And that's what's kept us going, that line. That's what I told the media the day Ben died, and that's what we still believe. And it's still tough for us, you know, especially for my wife. I think moms have a little tougher time than dads in a case like that, though both of us have had a tough time. His brothers have had a tough time. It's just rough. But God gives you the grace to get through it. And we've decided that's not going to let us, you know, it's not going to kill us. It's not going to destroy us. We're going to keep moving forward. That's what Ben would want. And we're going to keep moving forward and keep going in life and seek to glorify God however we live, whatever happens.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the same God that was here while he was here is the same God that is here now that he's gone.
Exactly.
That's simply the truth, and amazing.
Yes, it is.
Absolutely. So you have faced blindness, and some people think that you would stop there, and then you have a death of a 20-year-old son, and people would definitely, stop there and put their life on pause, and yet you continue to push on, continue with your impressive faith with God. And tell us a little bit about your passions now, your goals in life, where you're moving to, and how
Sure.
that's all working for you while this man cuts the grass outside.
I have three passions in life, Bashan. And number one is to preach the gospel. I believe that's what my main calling is in life, and so I preach the gospel. And I have a website. If anybody ever wants to hear any of the sermons, it's a new website. I'll give it to you at the end, and if you want to check them out, feel free.
Okay.
My second passion, in addition for preaching and living for God, is my family. We're very close family, and we love spending time together, and we actually get along with one another, which is really cool.
Absolutely.
My third passion is technology. I've seen so many doors open through technology. I could do a whole podcast about that. And I love to train people in the use of assistive technology. I love to be involved in testing technology. And right now I'm still at Dakota State, and fortunately they've given me a little bit of work with technology here in addition to my other duties, which are basically directing the counseling center and coordinating ADA services for students with disabilities. But my goal eventually would be to get to a position where I could be full-time working in assistive tech. Had a position like that back in 97 to 98. Felt like I wanted to be promoted when an opportunity came up, left technology, and I've questioned that ever since. Okay. So that's why I still train people on the side. And what I'm hoping is that at some point I'll find a position with a company where I can just, do tech and, fly around the country if needed, and basically base out of my home, because with my kids all here, I really don't want to move.
Hey, man, you sound like the perfect guy. That's what we're looking for. So absolutely. We'll talk after the podcast.
There you go. I thoroughly enjoy it. I tell you, technology has just changed my life. I can't tell you, 24 years ago, when I moved out to South Dakota, 24 years ago last week, by the way.
Okay.
When I moved to the land of the frozen chosen, I was still studying for ordination for the ministry. And I can remember having to ask for people to volunteer from the church to come in and read to me, because books were on tape. We didn't have such a thing as a Kurzweil or anything like that at that point. They were still $20,000, $30,000 a piece. And I can remember those days so well. And now, man, I can get a book. I can get it from iBooks or Kindle or whatever right now. Maybe it's on Bookshare, or my wife can scan it and I can be reading it within a couple hours. That's just one of the changes technology has made, but it has totally revolutionized my life. The job I'm doing now, I remember the days when we had, my first job, they'd get phone messages and I'd walk in and not know it, and my head would be hit by all these Post-it notes on the seal, on the door frame.
Wow.
Now, it's just email, and I can do so many more things with technology, as we all can.
Absolutely. Well, Keith, this has definitely been a great interview. I apologize to anyone listening who can hear the gentleman cutting the grass outside, but luckily we're at the end. So, Keith, if you can give us information on how to reach you, one parting piece of advice, and then we'll say goodbye.
You bet. All right. Well, let me give you some contact information. I am on Facebook and Twitter, and I'm the Keith Bundy on Facebook from Dakota State University, and then Keith Bundy on Twitter without a space, just Keith Bundy. If you do subscribe on Facebook, though, and I don't know you, send me a message also telling me that you heard me on the podcast, because I have this tendency, if I don't know you, not to right. accept your friendship requests. So, but if you tell me you heard on this podcast, I'll accept it. Okay. Then also, I can be reached by email, and the best email to reach me is Keith. That's KEITH Bundy, B as in boy, UNDY. That's Keith.Bundy at DSU.edu. So that's Keith.Bundy at DSU.edu. And then my website, if you do want to listen to a few of the sermons, it's pretty new, so there's not a lot up there, but there's more coming up all the time. It's just www.keithbundy.com. Keith Bundy, no periods or spaces or anything, just keithbundy.org.
Absolutely. And one parting piece of advice.
My parting piece of advice, guys, would be do not give up. Do not let blindness or any other circumstances get you down in life. God made you for a specific purpose, and there's no reason that you can't be successful. Find that purpose, go for it with all you've got. Seek God's help and go for it. Go for it. There's many times in life where I could have quit. But growing up, as I did in a poverty area, I saw a lot of people quit, and I saw what happened to them. And I didn't want that for myself. I wanted a life with a family and with a little bit of success in life. And I don't know if you'd call me successful or not, but I've accomplished a few things and been able to live independently with my family for 32, 33 years almost. And so to me, that's success. And you can have that too. There's nobody listening to this podcast that can't have that kind of success.
Absolutely. Well, as we say at the end, we'll see you on the other side.
All right. Thanks for having me, Bashan.
Absolutely, man.
In my traditional closing, if you think you can, or if you think you can't, you are right. Think pennies, get pennies. Think dollars, get dollars. See you on the other side.
This has been a Yucca Music Group production. Website 81x.com/Yucca/X. The Yucca Music Group can be reached at 678-608-8969. All rights reserved.